My name is Rebecca Harrison, and I'm 29 years old. 5 days ago, I sat in the boardroom of Harrison Industries, surrounded by 12 board members and attorneys, as my mother-in-law, Catherine Harrison, read the documents that had just been placed in front of her. Documents showing that I now owned 51% of her company through a series of strategic acquisitions I'd executed over the past week. "This can't be legal," Catherine said, her hands shaking as she read the share transfer agreements. "Rebecca, what have you done? How do you even have this kind of money? You're nobody. You came from nothing." "I came from a family that taught me not to publicly humiliate people," I said calmly. "Something you clearly never learned. And as for the money, that worthless trust fund you mocked at your gala last week, the one you said proved my family was lower class? It was worth $47 million. I used it to buy controlling interest in your company. I'm now the majority shareholder, which means I control the board. Which means I can vote you out as CEO. Which means the woman you called a fat pig in front of 300 guests is now your boss." Catherine's face went from red to white. The board members shifted uncomfortably, and I realized that the humiliation I'd endured 7 days ago at her charity gala had just become the most expensive insult she'd ever delivered. Before I tell you how my mother-in-law's public cruelty became her professional downfall, please like and subscribe if you enjoy these stories. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Now let me tell you how being called a fat pig at a charity event led to me taking over a company worth $200 million. I met my husband Daniel Harrison 3 years ago, at a professional conference in Chicago. I was 26, working as a marketing director for a mid-sized firm making $85,000 a year. He was 29, working as a vice president at his family's manufacturing company. We connected immediately over shared interests in hiking and travel. He was kind, funny, genuine in ways that felt rare in the Chicago dating scene. We dated for a year before he proposed. I said yes. We got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony that his parents barely attended and clearly disapproved of from the beginning. Daniel's family is old money Chicago. His great-grandfather founded Harrison Industries in 1952, manufacturing industrial parts for the automotive industry. By the time Daniel was born, the company was generating $50 million annually. His mother Catherine took over as CEO 15 years ago when Daniel's father retired. She'd grown the company to $200 million in annual revenue, making her a respected businesswoman in Chicago circles. Catherine Harrison made her opinion of me clear from our first meeting. "You're from where?" she asked when Daniel introduced us, her tone making it clear that Grand Rapids, Michigan wasn't an acceptable answer. "And your family does what?" "My father owned a small chain of hardware stores," I said. 3 stores across western Michigan. He sold them when he retired. "How quaint," Catherine said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Small business. That's nice. Not quite the same as generational wealth and industry leadership, but nice nonetheless." She looked at Daniel. "She's lovely, darling. Very accessible. Is this serious or are you just having fun?" "We're serious, Mom," Daniel said firmly. "I'm in love with her. I'm going to marry her." Catherine's smile tightened. "Well, we'll bin Chan and moi, Gestacal. See how that goes." The engagement and wedding were nightmares of passive-aggressive comments from Catherine. "Are you sure you want a small wedding? The Harrisons traditionally have large society weddings. But I suppose if that's more comfortable for you, given your background. You're not wearing white, are you? Given that you're older and this isn't exactly a first innocent love, perhaps ivory would be more appropriate." "Daniel, are you certain? She's lovely, but she's not exactly Harrison material. She doesn't come from our world. She won't understand our social obligations. Marriage is hard enough without a class gap." Daniel defended me every time. "Mom, stop. I love Rebecca. She's smart and successful and perfect for me. Her background doesn't matter." "Everything matters, darling," Catherine would say. "Breeding shows, but you'll learn that in time." We got married despite her objections. I thought maybe Catherine would warm up to me once we were officially family. I was wrong. She criticized everything. "My job? You're still working? How ambitious." Most Harrison wives focus on charity work and social obligations. "My clothes, is that from a department store?" "Oh. Well, it's fine for every day, I suppose." "My body, this is where it got particularly cruel. I'm not thin. I'm a size 14, curvy, Healthy, but not the rail-thin society wife Catherine apparently expected. She made comments constantly. "Are you sure you want dessert, Rebecca? You're looking a bit heavy. Have you considered a personal trainer?" The noun. Harrison women maintain certain standards. "Daniel, your wife really should watch her figure. It reflects on the family." I tried to ignore it. Daniel would get angry with his mother every time. "Rebecca is beautiful exactly as she is. Stop making these comments." "I'm just trying to help," Catherine would say innocently. "Maintaining appearances is important in our world. I'm sure Rebecca wants to look her best as a Harrison wife." 6 months ago, things escalated. Catherine was planning her annual charity gala, a massive event she hosted every year benefiting children's hospitals. 500 guests, black tie. Held at the Four Seasons, the most important social event of her year. "Rebecca, you'll need a gown for the gala," Catherine told me. "Something elegant, perhaps something with structure to smooth your figure. I can recommend a designer who specializes in flattering cuts for fuller figures." "I already have a dress," I said. "A black gown I wore to another event last year." Catherine's face tightened. "You're not wearing a repeat dress to my gala. That would be embarrassing. Let me take you shopping. As a gift. Consider it an investment in the family image." The shopping trip was humiliating. Catherine took me to an expensive boutique where she explained to the salesperson, loudly enough for other customers to hear, that I needed something to minimize my weight problem and hide problem areas. She vetoed every dress I liked. "It's not flattering for your body type." She finally selected a dress that I hated, a shapeless black tent that made me feel like I was wearing a garbage bag. "You look almost elegant." I should have refused to wear it, but Daniel begged me to keep the piece. "Just wear it, honey. It's one night. Mom's gala is really important to her. After this, you never have to wear it again." So I wore the dress. And I attended the gala 3 weeks ago. 300 guests in a ballroom at the Four Seasons. Chicago society in formal wear, cocktails and silent auctions and speeches about charitable giving. Catherine took the stage at one point to give her annual address about the hospital wing the gala funds had built. At the end of her speech, she did something I wasn't expecting. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge family," she said into the microphone. "My wonderful husband Robert, my brilliant son Daniel who's taking on more responsibility at Harrison Industries, and my daughter-in-law Rebecca." Every head in the room turned to look at me. I smiled, uncomfortable but trying to be gracious. "Rebecca comes from simpler circumstances," Catherine continued. "But she's trying very hard to fit into our family. Although I do wish she'd try a bit harder with her appearance." The crowd laughed uncertainly. My face burned. "I mean, my son deserves better than this," Catherine said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Daniel is handsome, successful, from a good family, and he married a fat pig who can barely fit into a dress." The words hit me like a physical blow. Fat pig. She'd called me a fat pig. In front of 300 people. Into a microphone. At her charity gala. The room went completely silent. I saw faces turning red, people looking away in second-hand embarrassment, others staring at me with pity or shock. "I'm not being mean," Catherine continued, laughing lightly. "I'm just being honest. Rebecca darling, you really should lose some weight. You're embarrassing our family. Look at you. You look like a whale in that dress I bought. You. Though I suppose even the best dress can't hide that much substance." More uncertain laughter from the crowd. Some people were filming on their phones. I was being humiliated in front of Chicago society, and it was being documented for social media. I stood up, tears streaming down my face, and walked out. Just left. Left the gala, left the Four Seasons, got in my car and drove home. Daniel found me 2 hours later sitting in our apartment crying. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry," he said, holding me. "Mom was drunk. She didn't mean it. She's already calling me apologizing, saying she was joking and it came out wrong. She called me a fat pig," I said. "She said I look like a whale. She said you deserve better." She said it in front of 300 people. That's not a joke that came out wrong. That's deliberate cruelty. "I know," Daniel said. "I'm furious with her. I'm going to demand she apologize to you publicly. At the next family event, she needs to stand up and apologize in front of everyone." "Your mother doesn't think she did anything wrong," I said. "She thinks she's entitled to humiliate me because I'm not good enough for your family." Because I come from simpler circumstances. Because I'm not thin and elegant and old money. An apology won't change that. She'll always see me as the fat girl who doesn't deserve her. So what do you want to do? Daniel asked. I thought about that question for 3 days. What do I want to do? Divorce Daniel? No. I loved him and he'd been nothing but supportive. Cut off contact with Catherine? Daniel would support that, but it would hurt him, and Catherine would just see it as proof I couldn't handle their world. Demand an apology? She'd give some fake apology and continue treating me the same way. Then I remembered something. Something my father had told me years ago when he sold his hardware stores. Rebecca, I'm putting the money from the sale in a trust for you, he'd said. $47 million starting lower ways to turbo. You can access it when you're 30 or if you need it earlier for emergencies. But I'm not telling anyone else about it. Not your mother, not your future husband, nobody. This is your safety net. Your independence. Your ace in the hole if you ever need it. Use it wisely if you ever need to use it at all. I was 22 when he told me that. I'd never touched the trust. Never even thought about it much. It was just there, managed by my father's financial advisor, growing quietly through conservative investments. I'd never told Daniel about it because it never seemed relevant. We didn't need the money and I liked keeping something private, something separate from the Harrison family wealth and judgment. But Catherine had called me a fat pig in front of 300 people. She'd humiliated me in the most public way possible. She'd made it clear she'd never respect me, never see me as worthy of her son, never stop attacking my appearance and background. So I decided to use my ace in the hole. Not for revenge exactly, but for leverage, for power, for the ability to make Catherine understand that underestimating people based on their appearance and background is a very expensive mistake. If you've ever been publicly humiliated by family, if you've ever been judged and dismissed because you didn't fit someone's idea of acceptable, leave a comment below. Subscribe if you want to hear how I use my secret inheritance to take control of my mother-in-law's company. Because what happened next was the most satisfying week of my life. I called Richard Morrison, my father's financial advisor who managed my trust. Richard, I need to access my trust fund. All of it, and I need you to help me acquire shares in a company, aggressively, quickly. I don't care what it costs. What company? Richard asked. Harrison Industries. My mother-in-law's company. I want controlling interest. Tell me how to do it. Richard was silent for a long moment. Rebecca, that's not a typical investment strategy. That's a hostile takeover. Are you certain? Once you start buying up shares, they'll notice. It'll be public. There will be consequences. I'm certain, I said. My mother-in-law called me a fat pig at her charity gala in front of 300 people. She's spent 2 years making my life miserable. I want her to understand that I'm not the nobody she thinks I am. I want to own her company. How do we do it? Richard was professional. He asked questions, made sure I understood what I was doing, confirmed I was acting of my own will, and not under duress. Then he went to work. Here's what I learned. Harrison Industries was privately held but had multiple shareholders. Catherine owned 35% personally. Her husband Robert owned 15%. Daniel and his sister each owned 10%. The remaining 30% was split among early investors and board members, none of whom individually owned more than 5%. To get controlling interest, I needed to acquire enough shares to outvote Catherine's 35%. Ideally, I wanted 51% to have clear majority control. Richard started making calls. Turns out, several of the smaller shareholders were unhappy with Catherine's leadership. She was authoritarian, difficult to work with, made decisions without board input. They'd been looking for an opportunity to reduce her power, but individually they couldn't do it. As a group, working with a new investor who had capital and wanted to take a more active role, they could. Over 5 days, Richard structured deals to purchase shares from 80 different shareholders. Most sold willingly once they understood I wanted to bring new management perspective. A few required premium pricing. One held out until Richard offered double the share value. But by day 6, we'd acquired 46% of Harrison Industries. $47 million bought me nearly half the company. But I needed more. I needed 51% to have controlling interest. The final 5% came from an unlikely source. Daniel's sister Claire. She'd been at the gala. She'd watched her mother humiliate me. And apparently, she'd had enough of Catherine's behavior. "I'll sell you my shares," Claire told me when Richard approached her. "On one condition. I want to vote to remove my mother as CEO. She's been running that company like her personal kingdom for too long. She treats employees terribly. She treats family terribly. She just publicly humiliated you in the cruelest way possible. I'm done enabling her. Take her down." "Your mother is your mother," I said, surprised. "This will destroy your relationship with her." "She destroyed our relationship years ago," Claire said. "She's a narcissist who only cares about image and control. This company was my grandfather's legacy. She's turned it into a tool for her ego. If you can bring some accountability, I'm all for it. Plus, after what she did to you at the gala, she deserves whatever's coming." With Claire's 10%, I had 56% of Harrison Industries. Controlling interest. I owned the company. I could outvote anyone, including Catherine. I was the majority shareholder of a $200 million manufacturing business. And Catherine had no idea. The share transfers were legal and filed properly, but they took a week to process through all the regulatory requirements. During that week, I said nothing to Daniel or Catherine. I acted normal. I went to work. I had dinners with Daniel. I even attended a family lunch where Catherine made another comment about my weight, and I smiled and nodded like I always did. Then, 7 days after the gala, the transfers finalized. I was officially the majority shareholder. Richard called an emergency board meeting, as was my right as majority owner. All 12 board members were required to attend. Catherine was required to attend. Daniel and Claire as minority shareholders were invited to attend. I told Daniel that morning, "I need you to come to a board meeting at Harrison Industries today at 2 p.m. "Why?" he asked. "I'm not on the board. That's Mom's meeting. You're a shareholder. You're invited. And you should be there. Trust me." "Rebecca, what's going on?" "You'll see. Just promise me you'll be there. And promise me you'll listen to everything before you react. Can you do that?" He promised. He showed up at 2 p.m. looking confused. The board members were confused too. Catherine was furious at having an emergency meeting called. "Who called this meeting?" she demanded as she entered the conference room. "I'm the CEO. I don't appreciate surprise meetings. Richard, did you do this?" Mrs. Harrison took the chair at the head of the table. "I called it. As majority shareholder, I have that right." Everyone stared at me. "What are you talking about?" Catherine asked. "You're not a shareholder. You're not even involved with this company. You're Daniel's wife who works in marketing somewhere. You have no authority to call board meetings." "That's where you're wrong," I said. Richard handed out packets to every board member. Documents showing the share transfers. Showing that I now owned 56% of Harrison Industries. Catherine grabbed a packet and read, her face going from confusion to shock to rage. "This is impossible. How did you buy these shares? You don't have this kind of money. This company isn't even publicly traded. You can't just buy shares." "I can when shareholders want to sell," I said calmly. "And apparently, 8 of your shareholders wanted to sell. Plus your daughter Claire decided to sell her shares to me as well. Combined with strategic acquisitions over the past week, I now own 56% of this company. I'm the majority shareholder. Which means I control the board. Which means I control this company." "On what money?" Catherine demanded. "You're a marketing director making, what, $85,000 a year? You couldn't possibly afford this. Remember that trust fund you mocked at your gala?" I asked. "The one you said proved my family was lower class? The one you laughed about as you called me a fat pig? That trust fund was worth $47 million. My father was a very successful businessman who sold his stores for significant money and put it away for me. I've never needed to touch it until now. Now I've used it to buy your company." The room was silent. Daniel was staring at me with his mouth open. Claire was smiling. The board members looked between Catherine and me like they were watching a tennis match. "You can't do this," Catherine said. "I'll fight this. I'll sue. You can't hostile take over a family business." "It's not a hostile takeover," I said. "It's a legal acquisition of shares from willing sellers. Every transaction has been reviewed by attorneys. Everything is legal. I own 56%. You own 35. I outvote you on every decision. That's how shareholder control works. You know this." You've been running this company for 15 years. You understand that majority shareholder has ultimate authority. Daniel, do something. Catherine turned to her son. Your wife is stealing our family company. Stop her. Daniel looked at me. Rebecca, is this because of the gala? Because of what Mom said? Yes, I said honestly. Your mother has humiliated me for 2 years. She's insulted my background, my appearance, my worth constantly. Last week, she called me a fat pig in front of 300 people. She said I look like a whale. She said you deserve better. She's made it clear she'll never respect me or see me as worthy of your family. So I decided to show her that the fat pig she's been insulting is actually wealthier than she knew, more powerful than she assumed, and capable of things she never imagined. I bought this company not to steal it from your family, but to teach your mother that underestimating people based on appearance and background is a mistake. What are you going to do? Daniel asked quietly. Are you going to fire Mom? Destroy the company? What's your plan? That depends on your mother, I said. I turned to Catherine. Here's what's going to happen. I'm the majority shareholder. I can call a vote right now to remove you as CEO. I have the votes. Claire will vote with me. That's 66%. You're done if I want you to be done. But I don't actually want to destroy this company. I don't want to hurt Daniel or Claire or the employees who depend on Harrison Industries. What I want is respect. What I want is an acknowledgement that you were wrong about me. What I want is a guarantee that you'll never publicly humiliate anyone again, the way you humiliated me. So you want me to apologize, Catherine said, coldly, and bow down to you, and accept that you've bought your way into power. I want you to understand that I'm not nobody, I said. I'm not from nothing. I'm not the lower class embarrassment you've spent 2 years making me feel like. My father built a successful business. I come from a family that values hard work and dignity and not publicly destroying people. I have resources you never knew about because I didn't feel the need to brag about them. And now those resources give me control over something you value. So yes, I want an apology. A real one. In front of this board. In front of Daniel and Claire. I want you to acknowledge that calling me a fat pig at your gala was cruel and unacceptable. And I want your promise that it will never happen again to anyone. Catherine stood there shaking with rage. And if I refuse, then I call a vote right now to remove you as CEO. I install new leadership. I restructure this entire company. I make decisions about operations and strategy and staffing that you have no input on. You become a 35% minority shareholder, with no operational control, watching someone else run your company. Is that what you want? The room held its breath. Catherine looked around. At Daniel, who was watching her expectantly. At Claire, who'd clearly chosen my side. At the board members who were waiting to see what happened next. At me, the woman she'd underestimated and humiliated, and who now held all the power. I apologize, Catherine said finally, the words seeming to physically hurt her. For calling you names at the gala. For humiliating you publicly. It was inappropriate and cruel. Why did you do it? I asked. Because you don't belong in our family, Catherine said, her voice hard. You come from nothing. You're not elegant or refined. You're overweight and ordinary, and I didn't want my son married to someone so beneath our standards. I was trying to make you understand that you don't fit. That you never will. And now? I asked. Now, I understand that you have money. I didn't know about and you've used it to buy power, Catherine said bitterly. Congratulations. You've won. You've bought your way into respect. Is that what you wanted to hear? No, I said. I wanted to hear that you understand that judging people by their appearance and background is wrong. That humiliating people publicly is cruel. That class and elegance have nothing to do with money or weight or where someone comes from. But I guess you can't apologize for something you don't actually think was wrong. I stood up. This meeting is adjourned. I'll be scheduling monthly board meetings going forward. As majority shareholder, I'll be taking an active role in company oversight. Catherine, you'll remain as CEO for now, but you'll be answering to me and to this board. Every major decision will require board approval, which means my approval. Your authoritarian days are over. The employees and shareholders of this company deserve better leadership than what you've been providing. I walked out. Daniel followed me to the parking lot. Rebecca, I don't know what to say. I'm furious with my mother for what she said at the gala. But this Taking over the company, this seems extreme. Your mother spent 2 years making me miserable, I said. She culminated it by calling me a fat pig in front of 300 people. She humiliated me in the most public, cruel way possible. She made it clear she'd never respect me or stop trying to make me feel worthless. So I used resources I had to gain leverage. To show her she was wrong about me. To protect myself from future humiliation. Was that wrong? No, Daniel said slowly. I just wish you'd told me about the trust fund, about your plan. I feel blindsided. I felt blindsided by your mother for 2 years, I said. Every insult, every criticism, every cruel comment. I have felt blindsided constantly. Now she knows what that feels like. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now I go to board meetings once a month and make sure your mother treats people with basic human decency, I said. Now I have leverage to protect myself from future attacks. Now your mother knows that the fat pig she's been mocking is actually the person who controls whether she keeps her job. That's what happens now. That was 5 days ago. Catherine hasn't spoken to me since. Daniel's been supportive but clearly overwhelmed by the sudden shift in family power dynamics. Claire's been texting me regularly with messages like best board meeting ever and mom finally got what she deserved. The board members have been professional. Several have privately told me they're relieved to have someone willing to check Catherine's power. Apparently her authoritarian management style has been a problem for years, but no one had the votes to challenge her. Now they do. I don't know what happens long term. Maybe Catherine will change her behavior. Maybe she'll continue to hate me but will be forced to treat me with respect because I control her company. Maybe Daniel and I will have to navigate this new complicated dynamic where his wife owns his mother's business. But here's what I do know. I'm not the fat pig. I'm not the nobody from nothing. I'm not the embarrassment to the Harrison family. I'm a woman whose father loved her enough to build her a safety net. Who's smart enough to use that safety net strategically. Who's strong enough to stand up to cruelty even when it comes from family. And who's now powerful enough to make sure the woman who tried to destroy her learns a very expensive lesson about underestimating people. Catherine called me a fat pig at her gala. Now the fat pig owns her company. Sometimes karma needs a little help from a $47 million trust fund. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been judged by appearance or background or dismissed as unworthy, leave a comment. Subscribe if you believe that underestimating people based on superficial judgments is always a mistake. Share this with someone who needs to hear that your worth isn't determined by how others judge you. Remember, the people who judge you most harshly are often the most surprised when you prove them wrong. My mother-in-law spent 2 years treating me like I was beneath her family. She called me a fat pig in front of 300 people to prove I didn't belong. Now she works for me. Now every decision she makes requires my approval. Now the woman she tried to humiliate has the power to fire her. That's not revenge. That's just consequences catching up to cruelty. And sometimes those consequences cost $200 million in company control.